Okay, we're talking to Lia Mills at the launch of Martina Devlin's book about Sisterland. I'd just like to ask you a little bit about Fallen, your novel Fallen.
My novel is historical, as Martina's last novel was, but mine is set during the period August 1914 to Easter week 1916, so during the Great War and the Rising in Dublin. And the novel, it kind of stays away from all the history that everybody knows, the familiar story about the Rising, because what I was interested in was thinking about what it would have been like to wake up one morning and find your city taken over by forces you didn't understand, when you didn't know who the people were, how it was going to end. And so even though it's a historical novel, I think it's a very contemporary question.
Well, if I could just go into it a little bit. So
Okay.
You have Katie, the main character,
Yeah.
and then you have her brother who
I do.
suddenly signs up to
Yes.
serve.
Yes.
That's on the Western Front. But Katie's from a particular class, a particular
Yep.
Dublin middle class, can we say?
Yes, she lived in this square, actually.
Okay, right, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And what I'm thinking is that the brother comes across as a little bit naive about what he's going to go to.
Well, they all were, actually. I mean, I did a lot of research for this novel, and in fact, there was a large contingent of Irishmen who believed that if they went to fight in the war, that they would help to bring about home rule in Ireland.
Yeah.
So they saw it as their patriotic duty to Ireland to go and fight in the British Army. But all of that, of course, was erased from history once the war was over and those men came home.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you have this, like I said, this middle class, and there was a particular middle class in Dublin that ended up in Gallipoli, which isn't the Western Front, but it's they still ended up there, and they were pretty shocked by what they met there. They didn't expect to
No.
meet that kind of violence or ferocity.
I think no one expects war to be as terrible as it is, and it's easy for me to say that, and I have no direct experience of it.
Yeah.
There are thousands of people right now in the Mediterranean who do.
Yeah.
But they did have a kind of romantic view of the war in the early days, and it has to be said, I think, that writers bear some responsibility for that. You know, you have poets like Rupert Brooke, who wrote all these romantic
war
images,
poets,
Forever England and all of that.
Yeah.
There were a group of war poets who were like that. And then there was a younger generation, or a more realistic school of poets that I would say came through the war, except they didn't all make it, like our own Francis Ledwidge, like Tom Kettle, who is a great constitutional nationalist who Liam in the book is a follower of Tom Kettle, and that's why he goes to war. A lot of people.
Well, if I just ask you a little bit about Katie, she drifts in her own world a little bit, I think. That's my impression. And then she likes Dublin the way it is in that particular period. Is that something that you're sort of nostalgic for? Do you have a particular bent for that period there, or? Yeah?
Well, I loved the city. I've always loved the city of Dublin, and in fact, when I was a child growing up, and I loved the story of the Rising. It has everything a good story needs.
Yeah.
You know, you have romance and betrayal, the few against the many, overcoming overwhelming odds, sacrifice, the whole thing. It was really, really romantic.
Yeah.
But the one thing that used to annoy me was that they always said people in Dublin were hostile to the Rising. And I thought, but this is where it happened, so it didn't quite add up in my mind. And when I began to do research for the book, I was actually shocked when I found out the extent of the damage that was done to the city, the number of people who died. Our politicians are still fond of talking about the 16 men who were executed as if those are the only lives that were lost. 485 people died in the space of a week in a really small area of the city. So, you know, there was a lot to be angry about at the time, and they didn't know how things were going to end up.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
And in fact, I have to say this, more citizens of this city were killed than rebels and British Army put together.
Okay, that's an interesting fact. So
Sorry, I get excited.
No, but you obviously do very good research, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Let me just ask you one other thing then. You stated elsewhere in another interview that you read Anna Sewell, Black Beauty series when you were growing up.
Yeah.
And I notice in Fallen that anything like horse-drawn traffic, etc., gets a very good mention or is specified in a particular way, I think, yeah?
Now that you say it, I suppose it's true. Well, as a child, of course, I was mad about horses. I think a lot of children are.
Yeah.
My brother worked as a groom in a riding school, so, you know, I was around horses a bit, and I used to really, really love them.
Interesting. Okay, that's great. Thanks for talking to us.
Well, thank you.
Thanks.